Hi, I'm Zoe, and I'm so excited to talk to you today about being a better leader in life. The idea of leadership usually makes people think of work, but I see it differently. As a woman, you need to make leadership decisions constantly, especially as a mom. So, working on confidence, understanding your communication style, following your core values, and setting healthy boundaries are incredibly important skills for every situation. I'm going to go ahead and get started, but before I do, if this is a topic that resonates with you and you want some support in speaking up and setting boundaries, I'm going to tell you how I can help you at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around. Some of the topics I'm going to cover are why you shouldn't please everyone, reflecting on your values as a leader, confident communication skills, planning your message, and how practice is your very best friend. So, the first topic that I know is a huge struggle for so many women is a strong drive to people please, which is ingrained in women from such a young age that it can feel like an instinct, but it's not. It's learned behavior that is reinforced over and over again, but it does not serve you. Wanting or feeling like you need everyone to like you can lead to a severe lack of boundaries. But learning to say no and establishing healthy limits is crucial for personal well being and maintaining genuine connections. But we all know that setting healthy boundaries is a challenge because we're raised and expected to be nurturers and put other people's comfort before our own. When you're constantly people pleasing, you may think you're gaining favor by always saying yes, but it's more likely you're teaching others how to treat you and letting them know they can add more and more to your workload or list of responsibilities. This doesn't actually make you a better candidate for promotion or get people to respect you as a leader. It makes them want to put all of their tedious tasks onto you and keep you in that role since you take everything off their plate. More than anything, it will lead to burnout for you and being taken for granted. If you're nodding your head and agreeing with this, it probably means you've been trying to keep people happy and it's actually hurting you more than you initially realized. Take a minute to think about what you hope to get out of people pleasing and what is actually happening for you. Are you getting the respect and rewards you wanted? Or are you still struggling to find your space and feel secure in your role? Another reason focusing on other people liking you or are happy with you even is hurting you is because you're not listening to your own experience when you're so focused on whether or not someone else likes you. You're not being guided by any values other than people pleasing, which means you're definitely not following your core values as a leader. Letting go of the need for everyone to like you can lead to much more authentic relationships, which takes less energy, makes connections stronger and deeper, and feels way more satisfying. It can feel risky and scary at first, but not everyone is meant to get along perfectly. Authenticity will also help you find your people who you feel connected with. Needing everyone to like you minimizes your own experience of others to the point where you don't even ask yourself, what do you like in a friend or a colleague or a partner? What do you want your relationships to look like? A good thought exercise around this is to start to pay attention to when you say yes, when you want to say something else, even when you want to say maybe. Then ask yourself why you said yes when you didn't want to. Are you afraid someone will get upset with you? Is that the worst case scenario? Or are you worried the entire relationship will end? Once you have a better understanding of your actual fears, you can look at how realistic they are and what's the most likely outcome. Most relationships are not so fragile that setting a limit or saying, I'm sorry, I can't, will completely upend it. If it is that fragile, that's a whole other issue that needs to be looked at, but that's another discussion. The next step is looking at what you can gain from setting a very simple limit. And this is a theme that will keep coming up. What can you gain? You already know your fears, but have you thought about possible positive outcomes? What if it's all completely fine? What if you feel seen and listened to and respected? Could you get some time and energy back to do something for yourself? Think about all the ways you could benefit from a change in your role and communication style. So again, this is the exercise to come back to again and again to really solidify a shift in your mindset around people pleasing and leadership in general. Another piece of being a better leader in life is identifying and following through with the traits you value in yourself and in a leader. You can start with thinking about a supervisor or mentor or just someone you look up to. What about them felt impressive and what felt valuable? Common values are open mindedness, being a good listener and a clear communicator, able to problem solve and adjust to the situation at hand rather than stay rigid in their thinking. Genuine curiosity is also a very valuable trait in a leader because it means they have an open mind to outside solutions and can take in new information when it is presented to them instead of thinking they know everything. They value input and fresh ideas and collaboration because they understand it only helps to keep learning and growing. A fixed mindset is not the trait of a good leader. Kindness is definitely a valuable trait, but were they kind and a pushover? I doubt that would be someone you want to emulate or someone you respected as a leader. But empathy is different than just aiming to be kind. Empathy helps foster and nurture relationships, build trust, and engage authentically with others, both below and above them in a hierarchy. I know I've really valued authenticity in my supervisors and mentors. When I feel like they're able to relate to my very fallible human traits, I feel seen and more connected and like they can understand that not every step is easy. Can you share some traits in the comments about what you valued in someone you respected a lot? Or can you just write them down for yourself? What did you value in a leader? Then think about which of those characteristics and behaviors you'd like to have and which ones you really need to develop to be the kind of leader you want to be. Balancing all these values at once while keeping goals and outcomes in mind is tricky and often doesn't line up perfectly. For example, if you're focused on a short term goal, you may have to focus less on empathy with your team to get it done. But that's why it's important to set time for regular check ins with yourself and reset and realign your approach and priorities as they need to be rethought. Values and goals do change, and it's okay if certain things need to take priority over others at different times. But again, knowing your core values will keep you aligned with who you want to be as a leader. You'll see that in day to day life too. Some days are about planning and prepping, and some are about basic needs and survival. You can't do it all the time, and accepting discomfort and ambiguity will help you not get stuck and overwhelmed when things don't go as planned. Try to come back to curiosity rather than judgment. What didn't work and why? Were there unforeseen variables? Is there something you can learn from this experience? And if something went great, what helped with that? If you can work to replace judgment with curiosity, that will really open up your thought processes from stuck to fluid and foster growth and connection with others way more than criticizing yourself or your team or your family will. Curiosity is the key to learning. I mentioned earlier how communication skills are a valuable trait of a good leader, and a large part of good communication is knowing your communication style and being open to tailoring it a bit. In my work with women, I talk a lot about being more assertive with their voice and presence. I always notice a reaction to that term because being assertive is often confused or conflated with being aggressive. And that simply is not true. Because societal norms, again, expect women to speak and act passively, any deviation from that behavior is seen as extreme and bad. In reality, assertive communication is respectful, involves listening, room for discussion, but also maintains clear boundaries and respect for both yourself and others. We're all socialized from young ages to communicate in the ways that society expects us to. For women, this usually means being soft spoken and deferential to others. We're constantly expected to be passive in school, at work, with friends, and even with partners. All of this adds up to not learning or having the opportunity to practice the skills necessary to be assertive, which is an absolute necessity for being an effective leader. We tend to address others' needs before our own, leading to much higher levels of burnout and chronic feelings of overwhelm and resentment. Part of the tendency is the pressure to say yes to a request without taking time to process what it involves or even if it's within your ability or scope. When you say yes when you're put on the spot, what do you feel like afterwards? Frustrated? Resentful? Are you annoyed at yourself? Was there a reason you weren't able to take time to think about your answer first? maybe worried that someone's going to again get upset with you or that you can't say no to a particular employer or employee. A skill to build on is taking time to think about your responses to requests or questions. It's easy to think of leaders as knowing all the answers, but truly effective leaders know that they don't have all the answers. What they do know is how to take time to find the best answer or solution, whether that's in the moment or after time and research and collaboration with someone who might have been through this experience before. Taking time to respond is probably one of the most helpful and most challenging changes you can make to your leadership communication. I've heard so many times from women that they just didn't know how to respond, so they said yes to something they really didn't want to do. At work, at home, with kids, it is always okay to take your time to think about a response. Just because someone makes you feel that an immediate response is necessary, that doesn't mean it is. If you don't know what to say, try starting with, I need to think about that and get back to you. Or, let me check my schedule and email you back later today. Giving a specific response timeline can also help ease the anxiety of the person making the request and lets them know you're not simply avoiding it. Having some ready-to-go responses can help you feel more confident in taking time to think and respond to a question or situation. Now, many women are also confrontation avoidant, which is part of what leads to saying yes when you want to actually take time to think about it. You're worried about confrontation or conflict, but avoiding confrontation is hurting your ability to lead and grow. Healthy relationships have some differences in thought and opinion. That doesn't make them bad. It's part of being authentic, assertive, and just a real person. It's your mindset around confrontation that needs to change, not confrontation itself. It's usually easier and more natural to think about what can go wrong before a conversation, which is usually why people are conflict avoidant. But to really change how you approach these conversations, you need to think about what could go right. Again, back to the gains. A combination of writing and visualization is useful in unpacking this resistance and helping your mind make that shift to a different way of thinking. So take a minute to think about your fears or what you imagine would be a consequence of speaking more assertively in a particular situation, or even just in general. Now I want you to think about what is a realistic outcome of confrontation. What are your fears of speaking up? Are you afraid of sounding rude? That you'll upset someone? Make a list in your head of the consequences you worry will happen when you speak assertively. What is the worst case scenario for you? Now think about how your avoidance is hurting you. What are you losing from avoiding confrontation? Are you feeling distant in relationships? Feeling insecure? Feeling invisible? Avoiding confrontation is actually doing more harm than good in almost every situation. Unless safety is involved, you always go safety first. I find that's something I have to remind people a lot of. Their safety is more important than anyone's feelings. But again, some examples might be, you don't ask questions in a meeting or afterwards because you're afraid of looking like you don't know something. And that leads to missed learning opportunities and can hinder your collaboration progress, overall success, and even hurt your chances for a promotion. You have a family member that doesn't respect your boundaries, and instead of setting boundaries, you withdraw, disconnect, build up resentment, and you limit the chance for authentic connection when it's entirely possible your family member does not know that you need more downtime than they think. People cannot read your mind. So instead of staying in that fear of what can go wrong, I want to bring you back again to what you can gain from different ways of interacting with others, different ways of leading others, and different ways of being. Positive gains are all about understanding what can go better by doing things differently than you have been. Changing our fear-based mindset is a crucial step to changing how we communicate and how we interact. So I want you to ask yourself a few questions. And again, you can change these questions to any situation you're in. What do you stand to gain if you communicate more directly? That can be, what do you stand to gain if you say no? What do you stand to gain if you ask a question? What do you stand to gain from any change? What would be some positive outcomes for you and your life balance? Again, being able to complete a project more quickly, developing a relationship with coworkers, feeling more confident in your ability to collaborate, and how can your relationships benefit from better communication? And to be perfectly direct, how can you benefit? What will you feel if you're able to speak up and be authentic? The possible benefits are actually endless. Close your eyes and just imagine for a moment you get exactly what you ask for. How does that feel? That's what we're after, and that's what you can have. The idea of changing how you communicate can seem abstract and overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. One of the best ways to implement anything new is to start with small, achievable steps and make a specific action plan. When you're starting to change and improve your communication style or leadership style, do not go after your biggest fear first. I repeat, do not do the hardest thing first. This sets you up for failure and reinforces the idea that you can't make this change, and you'll likely continue to avoid making change. Instead, start small. Think of a small thing that you'd like to address with someone you're already comfortable with. You can start with a simple request instead of an actual issue and work your way up. For some people I've worked with, this was saying like, hey, I don't want Thai tonight. I want something else, because they're so worried or conflict avoidant that they just don't bring themselves into the picture. It's also important to mention that everyone has different levels of assertiveness that they're comfortable with, and it's really common to feel more confident in some situations or with some people than others. So figuring out where your baseline is will give you a better sense of what's a good place to start challenging yourself and lead you towards success instead of failure. So here's a way to try this at home. And at the end, if anyone's here live, you can drop a chat, and I can send you actually this worksheet that I've created to help you plan and start these small steps. So I want you to identify 1 or 2 small, specific situations where you're struggling to communicate confidently, or conversations you are avoiding having. What is your goal in having these conversations? Meaning, what is the message you want to get across to the other person? Next, write down several small, concrete actions you can take towards meeting these goals. I usually stick with 3 steps you can take, very, very small. Now you have an idea of what you want to say and who you want to say it to. The next is, again, planning it out on paper, on a worksheet, or even just a Google Doc. The ultimate goal of this is to know what you're going to say in clear, concise language. And then you can also see where you might have watered down your message with a lot of filler words like maybe or sort of or do you mind. This undermines the clarity and confidence of your message and will lose the other person's attention very quickly. Think about that conversation you've been avoiding and pick 3 core ideas you want to get across in the conversation. Start with simple ideas, keywords, or short phrases. Whether it's something like more time to complete something, or I'm at my capacity, or I can't stay late. Those are fine core ideas that could be communicated. And when you're at home, you can write down those 3 key ideas that are the main goal of the conversation. And now imagine how you'd say it in the conversation, again, writing it down or even recording it at home. And this will help you know how you sound and what you say, and help alleviate some of the anxiety around saying it. So ask yourself these questions. Did you actually communicate what you wanted to say, or are you still avoiding the actual key points in the conversation? If you're imagining yourself avoiding the key points or watering down your message, write it down even more clearly and see where you can be more confident and more direct, less fluff. Now you should be pretty close to your final version, and this is where practicing out loud is the most helpful. Especially if you're new to communicating assertively, practice is your new best friend, like I said earlier. You can run through what you want to say with a friend or even by yourself, but think it through and practice what you want to say. If it sounds or feels passive to you, it is. We don't always write how we speak either, so when you planned your conversation, you likely used bigger and way more words than you need to communicate it clearly. Practicing out loud can help you hear your own message and help you manage your anxiety around the communication again. The more you practice, the more aligned you are with the message. Practice expanding your comfort levels by taking more progressive steps as you go. Think through and practice what you want to say. This is a reminder. If it sounds or feels passive to you, it is. See what words you can remove again to make your message clearer and simpler. And then again, say it out loud a few times. Focusing on speaking slowly and clearly, and just see how your confidence and feelings around what you want to say changes and solidifies. This can seem like a lot to put in practice at once. So again, just think about the areas that you want to work on. So I'm going to stop here because this is definitely enough to think about when you're trying to improve your leadership. For anyone live, again, I'm offering my mindset and communication planning worksheets for free. Just drop your name below and I'll direct message you and I'll send it over to you. And for anyone that wants to keep learning, I'd love to have a coffee chat and keep your momentum going. You can book a time on my calendar through the QR code on the screen, and I'll also be sending out my replay with a link to book a call after this, or always just feel free to message and chat me on Facebook. That's where I usually hang out. It's been a pleasure to help you on your journey to be a better leader. Bye.